In the past 3 years, my city, New York City, went into quarantine. I was furloughed, I was rehired. My uncle and aunt passed to COVID-related complications. My dad passed, not COVID-related. One of my dearest friends passed, not COVID-related. My roommate moved out and I finally had my own place again. I fell in love, and that same person I fell in love with broke my heart. I started this YouTube channel. I had an emotional breakdown because of the isolation of quarantine. My podcast went on pause. I went to Hawaii for the first time. I went to Senegal for the first time. And all of these things happened in a 2.5 year period of time. We're not even 3 years into this decade yet, which is fucking wild because I feel like it's been a lifetime. And I don't think that, I know I for sure didn't, but I don't think most people knew how much their lives would change when the World Health Association declared a global pandemic on March 11, 2020. My life has not been the same. I'm sure your life has not been the same. And since it's Mental Health Awareness Month, I thought that this would be the perfect time to have this discussion with y'all. We are day drinking today. My name is Queen. Welcome to the Vixen YouTube channel. If you are new here, hey boo. If you are not new here, hey boo. Thanks for coming through again. I appreciate you. Why have I decided to talk about this? First, I wanted to acknowledge the scenery. I decided to shoot this in my living room because I wanted it to be a little more cozy and intimate. This is not video essay. This is me just having a conversation with you all. I want to do a little more videos like that. I do have videos like that on the channel where I'm doing more of the introspective stuff because that is my jam as well. I want to dismantle systems, but I also want to figure out systems and things that work for me. And I also think it's important to reflect on yourself interpersonally. That's what this video is going to be about. We're going to talk about how life has changed for many of us because of the COVID-19 pandemic that we are still going through. I don't know what button, I don't know why I want to call the president Joe Biden, but that's not his name. I don't know what Biden and all of them is talking about, but we are still going through a global pandemic. These things that I'm going to talk about are still affecting us, especially if you have a marginalized identity. The reason I wanted to talk about them specifically is, like I said, I thought the opportunity was good because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. We're closing that month. But also, I was on the phone. This is like February that I started this conversation with this guy that I'm dating right now. And he works in the medical field, and I was just telling him, like, you know, I just don't feel like myself. I was venting to him. Like I said, my heart was broken. That's just recent. The breakup happened in, I'll say, fully in January. So in February, I'm, you know, dating this new person. He said something to me that at that point I had not thought about, and he's like, you know, you've been through a lot. You've been through a lot. It would make sense that you have these feelings. It would make sense that you kind of feel hopeless and not optimistic. It would make sense that you kind of don't care about life anymore. Like, yeah, you want to still live and be here, but it makes sense that you don't care about. Let me get this phone because they about to Z and Z. Yeah, he says to me, it makes sense that you feel this way. It makes sense that you're not as hopeful as it used to be. It makes sense that the coping mechanisms, he didn't use this language, but this is what he meant. The coping mechanisms that you used to use, they don't work anymore. Like, it makes sense. We've gone through a lot. A lot has happened in the past couple of years. And at first I'm like, you don't know me. You don't know what I went through in the past couple of years. And he's like, no, I don't. I know we've just met, but... And I think he had a lot, his perspective was a lot clearer because he works in the medical industry. He's like, I'm a different person. COVID-19, the whole pandemic greatly affected my life. It affected everyone's life. And I think that's what you're talking about. You have changed. And you cannot really identify why, but I think it's because of that. I know for me, this is him speaking. I know for me, that's why I see life completely different now. I'm like, oh shit. He's right. And I don't think a lot of us have come to that realization, because most of us, and this is me too, so I'm not judging, have wanted to like run away from that, who have wanted to act like we are okay, we are fine, we have wanted to persevere, we have wanted to, you know, get through it, because as a marginalized person, you have to do that to cope. That is a coping mechanism we have, and we are all actively using it. And I noticed that every time I brought it up, after that conversation with him, every time I brought it up to a friend or a family member, it was like, whoosh, oh shit, you're right. Life has changed. I'm different now. And I think that it is helpful for a lot of us to admit that, to come to head with that, and to accept that we're not the same person we were in 2019. Who is this person now in 2023? Do I like this person in 2023? What can I do to like this person? Oh gosh, there's a parking garage near me. And this is why I never record during the day. If you hear them working on that car, I'm sorry. Just trying to do a cute day video. Whew, Brooklyn. Who am I now? I'm getting to know this person. There are things that things that trigger me now that didn't before, things that alarm me now that didn't before, things that bring me joy now that didn't bring me joy before. And it's interesting getting to know who I am right now in this moment, and I'm embracing it. But I couldn't get here until I realized, like, you know, girl, you've been through an immense amount of change. You've experienced so much loss. Actually, also been fortunate enough to gain some things. I never realized how great of a community that I've cultivated for myself until this time period. It took, I guess, isolation for me to realize that the community that I've cultivated is the shit. Like, I'm good at fucking friendship. I'm good at building friendship. I'm good at keeping friends. I'm good at the relationships that I have with my family, more so now than I was, you know. My relationships, even at my job, are good. Like, I am really good at relationship building and community building, and I was not aware of that because it was so second nature to me. And because of the isolation, because of no matter what, if I asked anyone for anything, if I needed anything, it happened. And that came from years and years and years and years of cultivating the people around me, the community around me, and also me loving on them. I don't think that these things would have been reciprocated to me if I didn't give that as well. So I don't want to just talk about the things I've lost in this video. I want to also talk about the things I realized I've always had. So that was one thing. So I want to get back to what we've been through and the realizations of the things that we survived while living during this pandemic, because it's still happening. I don't care what Joe Biden I don't care what Joe Biden said. We're still in a pandemic. One thing that was apparent for all Black people in this country was the disproportionate health impact that COVID-19 had. Because we already have a faulty healthcare system, COVID heightened that for many of us. A lot of the underlying health issues that many Black people have in this country already, because of how the healthcare system treats us, because of the distrust that we have with the healthcare system. And there's lots of Black people who didn't even know they had underlying conditions until they had COVID, because of the access to healthcare here is so limited that you didn't even know that you had whatever heart condition until you got COVID. And then it's like, oh, you have this heart condition. So now, because of the limited supply of, you know, drugs or ventilators or whatever, you're not literally worth us doing the efforts to keep you alive. Seeing that in real time, I already had a lot of distrust with this government and the systems that we live in, but I think it heightened more for other folks, or became more apparent for a lot of people. I know that we have continued to distrust. We see how people are not trusting getting the vaccine. All of that heightened even more during COVID-19. It also became more heightened the economic challenges that we have here in this country. Black Americans have faced significant economic hardships due to the pandemic. Many of us lost jobs during this. I was furloughed during the height of the pandemic. I am grateful to have been rehired from my organization, so I still have a job, but that was scary for me, especially because I don't like looking for jobs because of all of the anti-black professionalism coded things that it takes for, again, I like to look like this. I like having piercings. I like changing my hair every week. I like my nails like this. That's not something that everybody's gonna, fuck with. So I like my job and I want to be there. So that was scary, but that was a lot dire for a lot of Black Americans. And a lot of us were working in these, what they call essential jobs, essential workers. A lot of Black people were essential workers. So most of us did not have the privilege to quarantine and work from home. I had that privilege, but most people that I know did not have that privilege and have a perspective very different from me of what this looked like, because I was able to stay in my house. Like I said, I was talking to the man that I'm dating who works in the medical industry, and he is just like, he was like, I was just so overwhelmed with death. Just so overwhelmed with the amount of people that died daily at the hospital that he works at. One of the things that I do directly notice where we have been very harmed is with the disruption of education for our children. The organization I work for, we work with children, we work in education, and that was because of the systems in this country. We already do not provide Black children with the resources that they need to honestly succeed in the system. That transition to remote learning was horrible. The New York City Board of Ed had no plan for it. A lot of people didn't have the tech that was needed for that transition, because a lot of people in education they're not admin. They're not fucking using computers in a way that I use them for my job. So a lot of them, they didn't even know how to, my mom works in the education system. I had to teach my mom how to do so much stuff. It was because I didn't want her at work getting on people's nerves. But just so much that they were not prepared for, and the tech always existed. They could have already prepared for a remote learning type of structure before this, but they didn't. The educational inequalities in our systems was heightened. So many parents realized how racist a lot of these teachers were towards their children. And then when they came back to school in person, and I've seen this firsthand, these children are so behind and no one cares. We all experience not the same, but a very similar trauma, and everyone just seemed to forget and just thought that we needed to go back to work and go back to school and everything would be back to normal. The mental health impacts that COVID-19 pandemic has had. We already have a poor medical system, especially if you're a marginalized identity, but it's even worse and it comes to the mental health industry in this country, the mental health facilities. Like, mental health is the last thing on the list, and a lot of places are trying to pretend it's the top thing on the list now. Now that it affected people with access in ways, now people want to pretend that the mental health of their employees matter, that the mental health of their students matter. I have been in meetings where I had to remind people, everyone on this call, all the families that we serve are survivors of a global pandemic. Everybody is going to wild out a little bit. You have to hold space for that and be graceful with that. The stressors of economic instability, social isolation, mental disabilities, physical pre-existing disabilities, and then on top of that, because everyone is at home, not everyone, I don't want to erase the folks who didn't have the privilege to be home, so I'm sorry. But most of us are home, and now we all see George Floyd being murdered. Breonna Taylor is shot down. So many other, we've seen these things happen. But now we're at a point where everyone is looking at something at the same time, and everyone wants something to be mad at. So everyone starts to pick up and pretend to care about Black lives because that was the thing to do. And then as soon as it's not the thing to do, they took the Black Lives Matter signs off their doors, out of their bio, deleted the black square. So Black people saw people pretend to care about them. And then when it wasn't the trend anymore, let them go like an accessory. And we're supposed to be okay. We're supposed to be fine. We're not. We're not okay. We're not fine. And that is okay. We have all been through a lot. So if you're being hard on yourself, if you are mad because you have not progressed to where you want to progress, if you are discouraged, if you feel like fuck it, it's okay. It's fine. You've survived a global pandemic, and there is no playbook telling you how you're supposed to do this, how you're supposed to get through this, and what is the right way to pick yourself up after surviving a global pandemic as a Black person, as a Black queer person, as a Black disabled person, as a Black woman. We've been in survival mode since birth, and that freaking expedited during this pandemic. And we are tired. We're tired mentally, we're tired physically, we're tired emotionally, we're tired spiritually, and it makes sense. And I hope that me saying this here gives you some solace or give you some resolve. You're doing fine. You're doing fine with the bullshit that's been handed to you, and it's not your fault. My hope is that for everyone watching this, that you come to terms with the fact that you have survived a global pandemic. You have experienced immense loss. You have experienced immense hurt. And you also have probably experienced joy and things to be grateful for, because I don't want to count that out too. It is okay to not feel okay. So I'm going to dip into my Virgo self-development introspective bag right quick. And I want you to write a list of all the things that you've been beating yourself up about so far this year. Write a list of those things and really reflect on that list and realize that I'm sure there are so many things on that list that are out of your control and have been directly impacted by all of the things that I talked about as far as COVID-19 and this pandemic. And try to let that go. Give yourself grace. Be compassionate with yourself. This is something that I struggle with. I don't give myself a lot of grace. I'm very hard on myself. But that's something that I've learned that it's necessary. And I just wanted to pass that along to you, that no, you are not your trauma, but your trauma does affect your day-to-day. And no matter how much you try to push back and persevere and push through until you deal with that, it's going to resurface. I do have a community care directory that I put together during the height of the pandemic. I have updated it. I have a link below. So there's resources, therapy resources, other resources like meditation and other coping mechanism devices, because therapy is not a highly accessible thing. Therapy should be free and available for everyone, but that's another video for another day. Capitalism is going to capitalize even when it comes to your mental health. If you have made it to the end of the video, please put a heart in the comments. That's how I know you're a real one, so put a heart in the comment. Also, thank you to the patrons. You make this possible. I have a few new patrons, and I'm happy to have you. As always, you are a bad bitch, you are enough, and I will see you in the next video. And yeah, check out this video. Alright, bye.
You good? No, you're not. You're not, baby, and it's okay. You're not good, and it's okay. You don't need to be good all the time. It's okay to not be good.